Hello everyone, welcome to this week's stream. Today we're going to take a look at Substance Painter 2.5. We're going to talk about new features and updates. So we released Substance Painter 2.5 yesterday, and so it's a free update. And like I said in this stream, we're going to run through some of the new features. Now, if you take a look at the product page, we always have a change log which shows the complete list of all the features. So be sure to check that out as well. But like I said, in this stream, we're just going to run through some of the kind of main stuff. So today, I kind of have this broken down into, a couple different categories. So first thing, I'm going to break this down into workflow. Then we're going to look at some new content. And then finally, we're going to take a look at APIs. So again, just hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. All right, so let's start by talking about workflow. So let me just transition here to my Substance Painter screen. All right, so workflow, a couple housekeeping things that are actually pretty big. So number one, support for NVIDIA Pascal GPUs and iRay. So we've had that issue for a while, and we are so glad to say that that is finally resolved. Also, we have support for AMD FirePro GPUs. Again, another kind of long-standing issue that has now been resolved. Another thing, kind of just in housekeeping kind of sense, is improved thumbnail overall computing time. So, when you look at your shelf, we're constantly working on how all the thumbnails are being generated. And so now, like I said, the thumbnail computation time has been drastically improved. This means that everything in the shelf thumbnail is going to generate so much faster, which is, again, pretty good in terms of workflow for that. We've also added some new templates. So whenever you create a Substance Painter document, so here if I go to File and New, and so we'll just discard this, you'll notice that we have this template option here. And so we've added some new templates here, and you'll notice that we have some specific for Unity. So now there's a new Unity 5, and there's also an Unreal Engine 4 template. So again, these just kind of set you up for those workflows, just to kind of help you, if you're starting fresh from that project and, you're going to be targeting one of those two game engines. So we now have these new templates here. The next thing I want to showcase is actually one of my favorite features in 2.5, and that's support for parallax and shaders. So here, let's take a look at what that does. And to start, I'm going to go to a material here. Now, I've got a substance that I created, this bricks material, and I'm going to use this. So this was a substance I created in Designer, and I know that it has a specific height output. So I'm just going to take this guy and just simply drag and drop and just add it here into my layer stack. And here I'll let Painter just kind of compute this substance, and it'll just render it here in my scene. And so it'll be just a moment here, and there we go. We have some bricks. Let's just come over here and turn off our shadows for now. And here on this layer, I'm just going to come over to my UV scale and just kind of tile these bricks here a bit, just to get something more like, here, let's do like this here. All right, so with this particular substance, you can see that here for my channel mapping. So in case you didn't know this, like whenever you import in a substance, you have this section here called channel mapping. And it allows you to it allows you to absolutely map how you want to relate the substance outputs to the inputs here to the shader within Substance Painter. And you'll notice that we have base color, height, rough, metal, normal, and so on. And everything's, set up. So, I do have height and normal, but, we're not really seeing, if I kind of just move this guy over here to the side, it looks pretty flat. So, our normal map detail is kind of breaking down there. So like I said, one of my favorite new features here is that we've added parallax in the shader. So now, if you'll notice here in my viewer settings, I am working specifically with the PBR Metal Rough shader. And you'll notice that we have this new option here for parallax occlusion mapping. So here, we'll just enable this guy. We'll drop down, you can see the features, and I'm just going to simply enable this. So I hit the enable button, but nothing happened here in the viewport. So what you need to do to get this to work is you're going to need to create a displacement channel in your texture set settings. So let's do that. So I'm going to come over to my texture set settings here, and where my channels are, I've got this plus button. I'll click this guy, and I'm going to choose displacement. So now I have displacement. The next step is that I need to have this channel mapped correctly to my substance. And so like I said, with the fill layer here, I have my channel mapping. And if I come over here to the channels, you'll notice that, well, I have this displacement. So let's enable this guy. Shows up here in my channel mappings, and I just need to set this displacement to be my height map. So I'm just going to choose height. So now we're starting to get some parallax. Let's go back over here to my viewer settings, and I've got this enabled. So let's start to increase my strength here. And so now you can start to see where I'm starting to get this kind of parallax occluding effect here. So again, if we just kind of zoom in and really kind of focus in on this area, you can see what this is going to look like with it off. But here it is, off and enabled. Now I've kind of really overcranked it, so I'm getting some distortion here, but just wanted to really drive home, what this is doing. So this is really nice, a feature. Like I said, it's probably my favorite one here within 2.5. And we also have control over the minimum and maximum samples with this guy. So that's the parallax occlusion mapping. Now, another thing that we've done here, so I'm just going to disable this, and for now, I'll just disable that. I'm just going to disable that displacement channel. So if I go back to my viewer settings, and here in my shader, I'm going to switch this guy to, let's try the PBR metal rough with alpha test. So we'll enable this guy here. And you can see with this guy, we also have parallax occlusion and some common parameters here. So one of the new things with the alpha test shader is that we've added this alpha dithering option here. So this is new, and this is going to help as well in terms of quality. So that's been added with the alpha test shader. So let me jump this guy back over here to just my regular PBR metal rough. And let's also see what else we have here. Okay, another really big one. Updated bakers now support 8K and non-square baking, so that's awesome. Let's come over here to our texture set settings. Let's go into bake textures, and you'll notice now we can do non-square baking. So for example, let's say, if I just uncheck this this lock ratio here, and I can come in, I can switch this to be, let's say, 1024 by 512 if I want to change that. Also, like I said, here we have the ability to switch this to 8K. So now we can bake maps out at 8K. Again, this is a long requested feature, and we're really happy to have this here in 2.5. Okay, so kind of continuing on with some workflow stuff here. Let's go back into, just using the preview sphere. Let's just start with kind of this default bronze material, and I'll turn my shadows back on so we have something. Okay, so another thing that we've added here that was also a pretty big requested feature within Painter is the ability to work with color profiles or LUT textures. And so it's pretty easy to enable that. So if I come over here to my display settings, you'll see that I have an option now for activate color profile. And so if I just activate this, I now have an option to choose a profile. So here in the shelf, you're going to see that we have a new kind of preset underneath color profiles, and we have a bunch of these LUT textures. So you can see there's a bunch of different options here. For example, we have things like here is, let's see. Well, here's some like sRGB vintage. Okay, so if I want to just use this guy, I'll just drag and drop it here on the profile. And so here's kind of this new style that I get. And with this, I can go in and adjust kind of my white point to this. So here's some other ones, sRGB sepia. So here's like a sepia tone. We've got orange. You can also click this button here to get to the mini shelf, and you can just browse and select the profile from here as well. Let's see what else we got. Here's another one, kind of like a film noir kind of look. So again, it's just really cool way to kind of have a nice kind of color profile here to your viewport. This was something that was requested to us a lot by studios because they're going to have specific view LUTs that they're going to use to try to match, especially in working with film and things like that. So we just provide these just to kind of get you started, but of course you could also use your own LUT textures in as well if you have something specific you need to match with here. All right, so let's turn off this active color profile, and let's take a look at what else we have here. All right, so in terms of, let's see, workflow, we're still talking workflow. I want to talk about another option that, again, is another long requested feature, and that's the new opacity brush parameter. So here, let me do this. I'm just going to create a new Painter document here. And let me just select a mesh. I'm just going to use this really simple kind of rounded cube mesh just to kind of help demonstrate these next few features. Again, with this stream, I don't have like this really awesome asset. I'm using these really simple things, but I think it just helps to really kind of hone in on these features so you can just, really just kind of get the nuts and bolts of what's going on here. Okay, so like I said, we're going to take a look at this opacity on the brush setting. So here, I've just got a standard paint layer. I'm going to come over here to my brush settings, and you'll notice that we now have stroke opacity. So let me just set up a material here so we can really see what's going on. I'm just going to turn off all these channels, and I'm just going to have color option here. And let's set this just to a bright red so we can really see what we're doing. And here, let me just check this guy here. All right, so you'll notice that I tried to paint over here and nothing was happening. I want to just show you what I'm doing here just so you can get a sense in case this ever happens to you. The way that this guy is laid out, this is actually the rounded cube from Substance Designer. So we have a rounded cube and a rounded cylinder. And you can actually get to those. We actually have the FBX file itself, and it's in the resources. So if you go into like the program files, algorithmic, Substance Designer, and you look in the 3D view, I think it goes resources, 3D view, shapes, you'll see, we have these guys if you ever needed them for anything. But what I wanted to show was how, the UVs are laid out. So really in this case, you can see this is the 0 to 1 space here. Let's do this. Let's go to my viewer settings. I'll just enable my wireframe here. So again, this is the 0 to 1 space, and you can see that I have a lot of these faces are moving outside of that 0 to 1 space. So like in Painter, if I try to paint on this, it's not going to paint because it's outside the 0 to 1 space. So I just need to find the face here that's actually in the 0 to 1 space, which is here. So long story short, no features there. I just wanted to kind of illustrate that to you in case you're kind of new to Painter and you're watching the stream. All right, so let's turn all this stuff off here. Let's just go right to our 3D view. And let me just undo those strokes. Okay, so what I was trying to talk about was the opacity. All right, so now if you come over here to our brush settings, like I was saying, we have this stroke opacity. So I can drop the value onto this, all right? So now when I start to just paint a stroke here, you can see, well, I've got an it's got an opacity value to that. But as I start to kind of paint again, or a new stroke over top of that, you can see that it's starting to kind of just build up, this transparency as I paint like this opacity. So, where it's starting to overlap, we're just kind of just building this up and building this up. And again, this is a feature that was requested for so long, and we're really glad that we finally were able to get this here into Painter. And this is going to help a lot with a lot of hand painting and things like that. So anyways, it's just working as you would expect an opacity to work here on the brush, and we're building this up. But we also have a mode to this. So if I paint a stroke here and I hold down the A key on the keyboard, and then I paint the stroke again, you can see that it's basically taking that same that same opacity value, and now it's not really building up. So as I start to kind of just continuing this stroke over top of the other strokes, because I'm holding down the A modifier key, I'm still just working with that same stroke opacity. So here I let go of the A button and I start to paint again, and now I'm building my opacity back up. So that's how that mode works. So you've got A is going to keep you at a continuous opacity, and then without using the A modifier key, you can start to build up that stroke. Another thing that I wanted to point out about this, let me go back here to this layer so we can see what we have. Now, you'll notice we have stroke opacity, but here there isn't like a pen pressure setting for this. So the actual pen pressure setting for this brush is going to be set here on the flow. So here you can see that with the flow, you can enable pen pressure on this. Now, I don't actually have a Wacom running right now, so it doesn't do me any good. But you have this option here. And so the way this works is, like I said, the pen pressure is located here in the flow setting, but its effect on the brush behavior is the same as the one located on the opacity setting in Adobe Photoshop. So like in Photoshop, where you might have pen pressure on opacity, the way we have this set up, it's going to give you the same result there. Okay, so that's going to take care of our stroke opacity. let's see, what else do I have here? Oh yeah, this is another one here, is that we have support for Substance Designer 6. So the week before, we released Substance Designer 6, and there was a host of new features with that, of one of which was a long requested feature for text. So now within a substance, we have a text node, and you can have a text input field that can be exposed. So when you create a substance, the substance used in something like, say, Substance Painter, you'll have an input text field that you can work with. And so Substance Designer 2.5, the Substance engine has been updated to support Substance Designer 6 engine, which means we now have text support as well. So let me show you how this works. All right, we have a couple of procedural examples for this. Now, like I was saying, you could go right into Designer and create your own kind of text substance node. But what you can do is, just if you want to demo this, we have a couple of these here. So just to kind of give you an idea of how this works, let's do this. Let's create a fill layer. And I'm just going to set the color red. And let's just drop our roughness so we get a nice shiny result. And I'm going to increase my height value. And then I'm just going to right click and create a black mask here. And on this mask, I am going to add an effect, and that effect here is going to be a fill. And then for the actual fill, you can see I've got this grayscale input. I'm actually going to utilize one of our substance texts. So if you want to find these are just samples. You can see them here under procedural. So I'm going to grab this guy here, left click, drag and drop, and just place it right into here. Now you can see that, well, I've got some text here. And if I want to change my text, I can go to the input field and just type in some text. Now, this isn't like a full text system that's built into Painter. What this is just what you get for free out of the Substance Designer 6 support. And that's one of my favorite things about the Substance toolset. So here you have Painter. We upgraded it to the Designer 6 engine. Now in Designer, we added the ability to add text, but now with Designer, you can create utilities that allow you to have new tools like here in Painter. So for example, like I said, all this is just a substance that was created in Designer, really simple, expose the text input, the size, alignment, position, parameters. I take that substance, I added it here into Painter, and now I have a text utility. So with that, like I said, you can see that we can change the text at will here. We can adjust our size. We can do things like adjust the alignment here. We got your typical guys here, left, center, right, things like that. And then we have this position, so we can adjust the position here. So really straightforward on how this works here, but it's great that we have this kind of support in here. So one question that just came in here: can I use default text fonts in my commercial products? I believe so, but I think that's something that that would be best. That would be a better question to have our marketing team answer. And so I know that that's something internally we're talking about. Just to kind of go off kind of on a side tangent here, like when you have Substance Designer 6, you have the font option. And so here in Painter, all I'm seeing is just the text input, but you have a font option. And that font is going to use any of your system fonts. So what you can do is, you can choose whatever font you want. And then when you publish that substance, that font is basically embedded into the substance itself. So in this case, you can see, I don't know what font this is. It's some kind of looks like almost like a military font or something. But when this substance was published from Designer, this font is now inside of this substance. So the question becomes, well, can I legally do that? So this is one of the things that, I guess we're double checking on. So I don't have a really great answer for that as well at this time. But, I'll ask our marketing team and we'll communicate further on that. But that pretty much just kind of covers the ability to work with this. Again, with any of the new Substance Designer 6 nodes, that means that any of these new nodes that you have, if you use those within your substance and you bring those into Painter 2.5, it's going to work now. Okay, so that's support for dynamic text and such. All right, so now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and start to talk about some new content. So that was some overall workflow items that we addressed in 2.5, but we also were able to add some new content. And by that I mean, we've added some new filters and a new generator. So I want to kind of cover some of that stuff now. So Speaking of text and having this position offset, we now have a new filter. So here I'm just going to come over to my filter, or my add effect here, and I'm going to add a new filter. And here I'll just click the filter button, and if I scroll down, you can see that we have this new transform filter. So I'm going to use this guy. So we'll add this new transform filter, and now I have basically it's the transform node from Substance Designer is now here inside of Painter. That means I can do things like, use offsets. So now you can see that I'm using this as an offset. Now notice here that I'm offsetting, but because I'm working with, the way my UVs are tiling outside the 0 to 1 space, we start to get this repeat here. But if I don't want that, I can just come over here to repeat and just disable that. So I can do that here on the transform like this. So that's, again, working similar to how Substance Designer works. I mean to say how the transform node's working in Substance Designer. So here, again, we have our offsets, our rotation. Now, this is also using tile safe rotation. So it's a feature that we have in the transform node, meaning that if you need to tile the transform, you have to have it locked to certain angles. And so you can see that it's just with tile safe transform, here I'll show you, like basically it's going like, here, if I turn this off, you can see that as I start to move this slider, I get almost like a lot more smooth increment values as I move through here. But the problem is if I use this at something like, say, a 34, let's think of this like a degree angle here, a 34-degree angle, then, for tiling for this, it's going to break the tile. So that's why we have this tile safe rotation. So if I enable this, you can see that it kind of snapped it. Even though this is staying 34, it's going to be closer to like a 45 degrees. So if you're like 0, 45, 90, 180, those are all going to be safe for tiling, or rotations that are safe for tiling. So that's what this option is. Again, nothing super fancy about this guy. It's, the same transform that we used inside of Substance Designer. Again, just brought it here into Painter. So that's our transform. So let's take a look at another option here, which is our mirror. So what I'm going to do is take my scaling and let me just move this guy down pretty low and turn my repeat off. And I'm going to offset this guy. And here, let's add another filter. So we'll just come up here to our add effect. We'll add a filter here. And we'll scroll down, and here we have the mirror. So I'm going to add mirror, and when I do that, you can see it's already starting to work here. So we've got a mirror, and we've got the x-axis, y-axis, and a corner. And then here we have a mode. So you can see that I can choose between, do I want to mirror across the y-axis? Do I want to mirror the x-axis, the y-axis, or this mirror corner? If you want to see what this axis is actually doing, you can turn on what we call display debug. So I turn that on, and because I'm using the x-axis here, as the option, you can see I get this line that just shows me, where this mirroring is going to take place. This isn't a great example with text because it looks flipped, but I'll show you another option for this here in a moment. So you'll notice that I can actually change or adjust that x-axis offset here. So here, if I go back to my transform, which is cool, you can see, again, how this effect stack, this is what we call this here in Painter. All these guys are kind of building up to give me this, this full result. So for example, I've added a text filter, and then transforming it, and then now I'm mirroring that transform on top. So I can jump back to this transform here, and then do something like, say, adjust my size. But the mirror is still in play here, or the mirror option is still working for me. So here you can see I'm just simply, mirroring that text. If I want to switch this to, say, like the y-axis here, I can do that as well. Then you also have this option here for the mirror corner. And so now I've got this kind of four-way tile here. And then I can choose where I want this to go. So like, is this going to be, bottom left? I'd have to make an adjustment here to get that to work. Let's see, top right and top left. So the reason why it just wasn't showing off there is I'd have to come over and, switch that around. So another question here, are you able to reorder that stack? Yes, you are. There's keyboard shortcuts for it that for some reason I can never remember. But if you just right click here, it's really simple. It's like the Alt key and up and down arrows. I don't know why I cannot remember that. But yeah, say I want to do my mirror, I can just move that down. So now I've got the mirror, and then the transform's now on top. So here, if I want to adjust my scaling, you can see I can do it this way. So maybe what I want to do is I'll come over here to my mirror, and let's switch this to, instead of mirror corner, let's do x-axis. And let's say that, so let's say that I have it like this. And then I'm like, okay, well, I did a mirror, but you know what? My text is kind of large now. So then I'm going to put the transform on top. So now the transform is small, but what's cool is I can now move that entire mirror effect as like it's a whole piece. So now I can place this specifically somewhere if I wanted to. So anyways, pretty cool. All right, so like I said, I'm using this text, not a really awesome example of this. So let me show you another way. Let's turn this off or delete that layer, and let's grab, let's just do a standard layer here. And I still have just my red color here, which is going to be good. All right, so here I'm on this, and this is really where I'm excited about this mirror tool, because there's been so many times when I've needed to do something like this, and we couldn't do it. And also, I was kind of looking at some ways where, and there are a lot of people who are using Substance Painter to create some tiling textures and such. And so you can do that with a couple tricks in the way that you kind of set up your kind of UV layout so you can mirror things as you paint a stroke. But you were kind of, and it would mirror based on, because of the way Substance Painter is trying to always paint or continuous stroke across discontinuous UV edges. But what you miss out on is the actual mirrored stroke within the 0 to 1 space. So long story short to that, we can finally do that. So let's say, I paint a stroke here like this, which was terrible because I'm trying to do this with a mouse. And I want to mirror this stroke as I paint. So now it's real simple. All I got to do is just come over here to my filter. And let's just add a mirror operation. And I'm going to do a debug on this so I can see what I'm doing here. And now I'll come back here to my stroke. And here, as I start to paint, I'm getting this cool mirrored stroke now. Now, see, this is really great. So you can see that now you could just import like a polygon plane on here, where all the way, depending on how you set up the UV boundaries here, so that they'll constantly, paint across the UV stroke. Of course, you would get the stroke painting across the discontinuous edges, but now within that 0 to 1 space, you could also use this mirror operation here to, paint tiling textures. So it's pretty cool. All right, so that's the mirror tool. Let's see, we also have a warp as well, which is new. So let's demonstrate that. Actually, let me try doing this. Let me go back to my undo stack, and let's go to here. All right, there. I just kind of went back to what I was working on here. And let's take our mirror tool and let's drop this guy out. All right, so now we just have our painter text again. Let's see. Like I was saying, we can do our offset and so on. So let's just adjust our scale like this. Okay. All right, so now I just wanted to have something on here. Okay, so a quick question here. What's the difference between symmetry and the mirror filter? That's a good question. They're basically doing kind of the same thing. The thing is, though, is that you can get... I think you can... The thing that's really cool about it is that you can think about how you could go in and kind of use these two guys together. So, for example, this is kind of like an overall... Like, if you're using this is like an overall, like, global mirroring mode. But what you're doing by using the filter itself is think about that more like an atomic kind of granular way of doing mirroring on the stroke itself. So maybe what you could do is, okay, this is one thing that's always bothered me here. So like if we come into here, you've got X, Y, and Z mirroring like this. So let's say I want to do X, but I wanted to do X and Y mirroring at the same time. Well, I can't do that because we don't have an X, Y option here. So what I could do is enable X here and then add the mirror generator here, or excuse me, filter, and set it to the Y, and now I would get, the global X, but then I'm also kind of on, an angle here using that on the Y. So just another way to kind of think of it. All right, so yeah, like I was saying, we've got this warp node as well. So warp now supports a custom noise. So let's come in and take a look at that. So I'm going to add another filter here. And I'm going to grab warp. Here it is. All right, so here's warp. And let's see here. let's do this custom noise, and for the noise, I'm just gonna grab something like let's do procedural Perlin. All right, and here, let's grab this noise here. All right, so yeah, a lot of options on for this guy here. So here's our directional warp, so we can enable that or disable it here. Okay, so let me start to work with this guy. It took me a moment the other day to kind of get this to kind of work, to figure out where I was getting this to work here. So bear with me for just a moment. All right, so I've got my intensity here. And let's go back to my scale for this noise, the distance. All right, there we go. All right, so what I'm doing here is we have this custom noise. So like I said, you have this source type. So if I do like default, okay, this is just using like the default setting for the warp. And you can see here this intensity value's, pretty much way too intense. So I'm going to pull this guy up, and this is the kind of warp that I was getting before. So something like this, and then maybe I could come in and try to blur it somewhat. It was just kind of, more difficult to work with at that setting here. So now we added the ability to add a custom noise to this. That means that here in the image input, I could add any noise I want to drive this warp. So this is now, again, working more like it would in Substance Designer, where you have a warp, and then you can, put a grayscale input as the driver to that. So that's what I'm doing here. So now with that, I've got this intensity, and I'll just start to kind of crank this guy up here. And so now I'm getting this type of warp because of this Perlin noise that I'm using. And of course, this Perlin noise is a substance, which means, it has its own set of parameters. So I'm just changing the distance here, which is giving me more kind of octaves to warp this text. So, again, this is just another option here to this warp. Some of our other filters have added the ability to do this as well. So like we've added this to where you're going to have this extra custom noise input slot to this. Okay, so another thing I kind of want to just bring your attention to on this is we also have the ability to do a directional warp. So if you're familiar with Designer, you have a warp node and you have a directional warp node. Here, we've just combined them together. So if I wanted to, I could turn on, directional warp, and then I could set like a warp angle to this guy. And then it's going to work similar to, being able to warp that directionally. Another thing you have here is this intensity divider. So if I click this drop down, you can see I've got a couple options. So like basically I look at this as like kind of the overall kind of fidelity to this intensity. So at a value of 10, you can see this just obliterates everything I'm doing. So I'd have to lower my intensity quite a bit. All right, so if I keep it like really small, it's hard to work with. At a 10, that's not really working. So if I bring this up to 100, okay, now I've got, a little bit more intensity value I've got to set. If I set this up to like say 1,000, I got to really drive this intensity to get this. So this is, just a divider of the intensity value is all that it is. You could leave it at 1,000 if it's not giving you, here at 32, which is the max value, you can't really get the effect that you want. Then drop it down to like 100, and now you can see that, okay, now I can really overdrive that intensity and get more in the range that I want. So it just depends on, how much intensity you want for that. Okay, so that's our warp there. Let's also take a look at some other filters here. So what I'm going to do is just jump back here over to my preview sphere. So in case you're wondering, this is just the preview sphere that ships with Painter. So if you just go to File, Open Sample, there's a preview sphere, and that's all I'm working with here. The reason why I'm using this is because it already has a set of baked textures. Where are they here? It already has a set of baked textures. So if you want to just jump in and be able to, kind of work with some of these filters that use these image inputs, it's already there, and it's just easy to kind of work with there. Okay, so the next thing is let's talk about the contrast and HSL stuff. All right, so here, let's say that I've been working on this asset here, and I've got basically a layer stack going. Everything's grouped, and let's say at the end of this, I want to do some kind of image correction to this. So like, do I want to do like a levels adjustment, maybe contrast, luminosity, or even adjust the hue and saturation? So if I just come over here to my filters, here's where I have a lot of filters. Like I said, we've got our mirror, our sharpen here. If you need to sharpen the texture, we've got that. Transforms, warps, and so on. But we also here have our histogram shift and scan, high pass, and so on. But we now have this new contrast and luminosity. So if you just take this guy, if you left click and drag and drop that right here into your group like this, well, it's going to create a layer. It dropped it at the bottom. So what I'm going to do here is just left click and just drag and drop this guy up here towards the top. Okay, so what this has done, when I take something, this is, you may or may not know this, but if you take like something like a filter like this and you drag and drop it into the layer stack, what it's going to do, it's going to create the layer, it's going to apply the filter automatically, but what it's going to do is it's going to automatically set all of the channels blending modes here to this pass through. And that's very important if you want to do something like have one layer act like an image adjustment. So like if you're in Photoshop and you're used to using adjustment layers, that's precisely what I've created here. Instead of having to manually go in and create a layer and add the filter and then take every single channel that I want to pass through to all of the stack here to pass through mode, if you just drag and drop it here, it does it for you automatically. So now if I go into my contrast luminosity, you can see that, well, I can go in and start to adjust my contrast and my luminosity. So simple, but it works. So here is that effect. All right, so now I'll just delete this guy. And the next one here is this hue saturation. So it's this one here. Now we've had this before, but we've done a slight improvement to it. So if I just left click and drag and drop, this time I'm going to place this guy where I want it to be. So I want it to be at the top, so I'm just going to place it at the top when I drop it in. All right, so if you select the options here for this filter, you'll notice that we now have this new mode called perceptive. So we had regular and perceptive. And like I said, we've had this filter before, but this new perceptive mode is well, it's new. So now if I start to adjust things like my hue, I can just do that, and it's just a bit more user friendly on how you can work with the color values and such. So if I could use this to adjust a couple, do some image correction here to this guy if I needed to. So that's the let's see, the HSL perceptive mode as well as our luminosity and contrast. All right, so kind of moving on with content, let's take a look at some new stuff. So let me just remove these layers. Let me make sure I don't have shadows on. Let's turn that off. Okay, so we've had this mode within Painter when you use a fill layer called triplanar. And so let me just show you that real quick in case you haven't seen it before. So materials. I'm going to grab this lizard scales. So let's just take this guy, left click, just drag and drop it here into my layer stack. And so here we have these lizard scales. And this is a substance. So we have this mode here on a fill layer that allows you to come into the projection type, and you can switch this to triplanar. So if you're getting seams on your mesh when you're using something like a noise or something like this, you can enable triplanar projection, and it's going to automatically eliminate these seams through this option. However, there's no options for the triplanar, so sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works better in some areas on the mesh, and sometimes it doesn't work as good on other areas, and it's it's there, but you don't have the options. So what we've done is we've added a new advanced triplanar filter. So I'm going to show you that. Let's just set this back to UV projection for now, and here I'm going to add a filter. And here at the top, you can see we got advanced triplanar, so let's add this. All right, so now I have advanced triplanar, and now I have all kinds of settings here that I can use to really fine-tune how this triplanar projection is working on the mesh. Now, you do have to have image inputs for this guy to work because, again, it's a filter and it's taking in content. So it needs world space normals and a position map. So be sure that you have those guys baked in your project. If you don't have them, it wouldn't work. You wouldn't see anything here. But now that we do have these, you can see that I have my projection here. I can switch. Do I want to project across all axes here? Do I want to use X only? Here's Y only, and so on. This is obviously giving me some problems. So I'm going to switch this here to all axis. We've got our blending mode, advanced versus linear. So here I'm going to switch this to advanced. And then I have the projection where everything's being projected. You have the control over the blending contrast. So where these maps are getting blended together, we can go in and start to adjust this blending contrast. Texture tiling. So if I need to tile this guy, I can do that. I can also have control over the individual axes as well in terms of rotation. So we have rotation around the X. So here, I'm just going to start to rotate this guy. And let me just look at my blending contrast. Pull this up a little bit more. Here's our Y-axis. So I can start to try to blend this a little bit better. So now I'm getting a little, I think that it's lining up a bit better here in this area. And then also I've got my rotation around the Z if I want to. And you can see where, here, if you look right in this area and I start to rotate that Z, you can see where, the Z projection here, where these textures are trying to blend and line up. And like I said, we can also adjust that through the blending contrast. If it's really, really low, you'll see maybe more of a blurry transition in that area. Here we also have the ability to offset. This is offset X and X, offset, for the Y and X, and, basically just offsets for all of the projection angles like this. So what you can do with this is just really start to fine tune all of this, kind of the way this triplanar projection is working. Whereas before you had a mode, you set it, you get what you get. Works sometimes it may not. Now we just have this mode to kind of help us, with this all together. So now that we have this, I'm going to show you another demonstration of it. So that was usage as a filter. So can we use it on a mask? So now let's say that I create just like a standard layer here. And let me just mask this layer. So I'm going to go add black mask. And now I'm kind of thinking in the mindset of I'm working with a mask here in Painter. A lot of times people will use Painter just to paint really sophisticated masks that are then exported, and then inside their engine they're using the masks to blend materials together. So we wanted to be able to add a generator that helps us to eliminate seams when using noises and such. So for example, let's say that I come into here and let's see here. I'm going to add, let's do like a fill, and I'm going to add a noise. All right, so we can't see anything because, again, I'm just working on my mask. So what I want to do right now is I want to look at my mask. So a quick shortcut to do that is just if I hold down the Alt key, I can left-click right on the mask, and that puts me in mask mode like this. So here you can see where, okay, well, we're obviously getting some seams. This is a 3D, this is a procedural noise that's projected in 2D space. So obviously we're going to get like seams and stuff. So I want to fix this before I really start working with it here in my mask. So what I'm going to do now is come over and I'm going to add a generator here. And for this generator, I'm going to choose the advanced triplanar generator. All right, so we'll put this guy in. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm using this guy just to kind of illustrate what's happening. So you can see that this is what I get by just adding a fill to this. So this is the problem that we would be getting. So instead of using this as a fill, what I'm going to do is add the triplanar generator. Now, what we can do on the triplanar generator is we have a mask input. So with this mask input here, I'm just going to choose, let's do procedural. I'm going to choose that same black and white spots noise. Now, that mask is being corrected with this triplanar. So now you can see the result we get is much, much better. And here I can adjust my tiling. So maybe I want to put my tiling like this. So here's like the before and after. So let's do this. So here's what we had before. And now here we have it corrected with the triplanar. Now maybe I have a little bit of blur in this area. So again, it might be something I can adjust here with my blur contrast. Maybe I need to adjust some of my offsets or whatever, but I can do it that way. All right, so now that I kind of have this, I'm going to just go back to just my regular mode here. And then what I'm doing, like I said, I'm just using this as a mask. So now if I start to paint, well, here, let's do it like this. Let's go and switch this to like a darker color. And so now you can see I'm just, painting masking out this this paint stroke here with that mask that I had, but now I don't have to worry that that procedural noise that I'm using is ever going to show some type of seam while I work. So basically, that's really what you would use this advanced triplanar generator for. It allows you to input a mask that you can then, you know, correct for seams by projecting that across all of these axes here that we're working with. Okay, so that's our advanced triplanar generator. Just another usage of that. Okay, so that's going to cover our new content. We've talked about workflow. So one of the last categories I want to talk about is a lot of the API changes. Okay, so one question this came in: what is triplanar exactly? So just a quick recap to that. What it is, it's just a in the case of what we have in Designer, it's a projection mode. So if we have a fill layer, just a quick demonstration for this. Let's see, fill. And I'll turn off all my channels here. I'm just going to come over, just grab a texture like this. All right, so I have this procedural texture. You can see, you know, I'm going to have seams on this guy. So if I just switch this to triplanar, it's going to just then take that noise and reproject it across the X, Y, and Z axes for that. So it just kind of helps to eliminate seam. And what I was showing here in the video was that, well, we've always had this option, but now we've added the ability to have a more advanced triplanar as a filter and as a generator. Okay, so actually, before I run into the API stuff, what I'd like to do, let me just kind of take a quick run through some of the comments we have coming in. Let me see if there's anything that I can address through here. So yeah, there was some stuff about text. All right, yeah, and if anybody has any questions, please, you know, just write them here in the comments. I'm trying to monitor them both as I go here, so I apologize if I'm missing any questions. Let's see here. All right, well, let me just kind of move forward and just keep working here instead, and just keep working here on discussing the API. Oh, wait a second here. Instead of a generator, can I add a tiling alpha? Okay, yeah, so no, we don't have this question here was asking about alt-clicked and mask when you enter into that view. We don't have a button for that, actually. It's just a keyboard shortcut. Actually, here, there is a button for it. Let's do this. Let's see, I've got my fill. Just so we have something here. So I'll create a black mask. Here's something I just want to cover real quick as a tip as we're kind of running through this. So like, because I do this all the time. So see how I've got this mask. My first thought would be, oh, I want to put a procedural in here. So I'm just going to go and just do this. And it doesn't work. So in this particular case, we can't work this way. You can't just set this value to be a procedural. What this value is actually talking about here, even though we have this as a button, is it's talking about this slider. So for example, if I'm in here in my mask, and I'm painting my mask, so white obviously is going to show through, and if I hit X on the keyboard, it gives me a quick toggle, and then I can paint this value back out like this here. So this is just talking about basically the grayscale value that I'm using to paint my opacity map. But, you know, like I said, you can't just add a filter onto that. So I'm just going to right click and use clear mask here. So that's why if I want to add something, what I need to do, if I want to add like a procedural noise, I need to add this as a fill. So if you've been seeing me do this and you're like, why does he keep doing, you know, that's why, because it didn't work before. Now, again, it's a little confusing because you see this and you're like, well, it looks the exact same to me. I mean, now that it's fill, I'm basically saying I want to fill this completely white, or I want to fill this mask completely black, or if I want to fill it at 0.5, this is kind of what I get. But now I have the option to actually choose this as a value. Okay, so here's kind of like this black and white spots here. Okay, and so the question was, is there a button for this? Well, there kind of is. If I come over here to my display settings, I believe it is. I always forget where this stuff is. Because I just do it by the, okay, here it is, mode. All right, so if you take this mode here, you can actually switch this here into, I believe, solo mode. And then underneath the view, you could set this to mask like this. So it's kind of a real roundabout way to getting to it when it's easier just to, you know, alt click on. So you've got your, if you select this guy and I hit M on the keyboard, I'm in my material mode. If I just alt left click on this it just quickly takes me into mask mode. And then I hit M again just to go back to material. Okay, so yeah, I was getting ready to run into the API stuff. Let's see here. All right, so here, let me take a step back to Painter. All right, so if you're interested in doing any type of API stuff, so we've added the ability to do some scripting and build plugin tools inside of Painter. And it's actually really awesome. So even if you're not interested in this at all, I would urge you to keep watching, because this is also going to afford our community members who create plugins and stuff to make extra cool tools. So this means that not only can we add stuff quicker, but we also have a lot of extremely talented technical artists who are community members who are going to be building tools for this as well, I'm sure. So it just really expands what we can do in Painter. So for example, if you go to help, we have scripting documentation. So if you're interested, that's where you would get to this page that I'm at right now. All right, so if you look here at the top, we always have this API changes and we list what's new and what's not. So here within this is the API 1.0.3, which is Painter 2.5. This is what's new here. And so I just kind of want to run through some of these things. So number one here for plugins, we've added this AGL widgets QML component library. Okay, so this right here is it's matching Substance Painter style with specific documentation. So if you want to take a look at what this does, if you just click this button here, it'll show you here. So this is really great if you've been using your own tools. We now have this new widgets control. So for example, like before, if you wanted to make a button, you had to do it like, really manually process to do that using like QML and stuff. And I found it to be quite difficult. But now, we have ALG, meaning algorithmic ALG button and checkboxes. So we've got these like handy like custom made widgets now, which is great. Okay, one question just came in. Do you plan to have rename option for the, I don't know. I'm going to ask about that because that is a fantastic question. I totally agree. This is totally needed. Because if you have like a huge effect stack, like you're saying, and you have like all these things, like you want to be able to rename that so you can say like, more of a descriptive of, that's what this is doing kind of stuff. So yeah, really, really good idea. I'll ask the team about that. Okay, so that was kind of the widget stuff, which is really good for doing that. Resources image provider. So this here, again, it's just a way to display resource thumbnails in a custom Substance Painter plugin, which is nice. So that's been added here. Upgrade Qt to Qt Quick Controls 2. Okay, so here's another one that's pretty big, custom shader UI. So for example, if I jump back over to Painter, you can see here that, I've got this shader for PBR Metal Rough, and we've added this parallax occlusion mapping. If you're adding your own shaders, like you could write your own shader that you could use. So let's say, for instance, you're working in like a custom engine and you have a shader that you wrote specifically for that engine, and you want the Painter viewport to match that exactly. Well, you might go through the process of creating your own shader. But what we haven't had before was the ability to create, shader UI parameters. But now we do. So if you have that, you can now plug in and create your own shader UI parameters. And you can read about that here in this extra section. So custom shader UI. We've added some new tutorials as well for this. So for example, work through tutorials on the basic custom shader, advanced custom shader UI tutorial and such. So here we've added some things for, baking. So ALG baking, report errors, map export. So add export document map method to export document stacks. Document stacks with a given export preset. So that's really good too. So where that comes into play is like before, when you wanted to export, some maps, you wanted to be able just to utilize one of these. If I come over to my export textures, here we have these export configuration presets. Well, now in your plugin, you can target those. So if you want to have it to do a specific preset, you can do that. Let's see what else. I won't run through every one because it'll be kind of boring for the stream, but let's see here. This one's really cool too. Create a method to set up a new project. So, we can set up a new project. Method to retrieve the URL for the last imported mesh. Let's see, get project settings, add new resources. and so on. So some really good stuff in here. Like I said, we're constantly growing the API, and the better it gets, the more cool tools that we'll get for this. Now, one of these that I'm really think is awesome about this is this one here, which is this WebSocket. So where do we have that guy here? Here, let's go and take a look at this real quick. So this is a tutorial for this. So this remote connection with WebSocket. So what this is like, what this is good for is having like a live connection between one application and Painter. And so this will be fantastic. So this WebSocket, it's a network specification allowing you for interactive communication between a server and its clients through HTTP protocol. So what we have here is just an example. This one is showing communication with Substance Painter via a browser, you know, something like that. So anyways, this will be really cool as we start to allow the ability to have Substance Painter, you know, have live connections with other applications and so on. So that's gonna be exciting in the future. I'll say that. So anyways, that's kind of like my favorite one in the API. Well, that's gonna cover the API part of this. We'll just use my cool transition there to go back to our Substance Painter splash screen. And so that's basically going to kind of bring this stream here to the end. And oh, I'm close to about an hour. So usually I ramble on a bit too long, but this one I'm trying to hit it right on. So let me see a few questions here. So one question: do I have to uninstall the old version? No, you do not. The Painter installer will do that for you. So it will automatically uninstall the old version and put the new one on top. And then, so one question here about this elf guy and how's this SSS done? Honestly, I'm not really sure how that was done. It wasn't done in Painter, so all the textures for this character were done in Painter, but then it's being rendered somewhere else that I'm not exactly sure of. So that's another question to take back to the team about SSS. That is something that we're actively looking at. So if you go to Substance Share, we do have like a real-time PBR SSS shader, and I use that for a lot of things. It's not awesome, you know, because it's a pretty big cheat in how it works, but it is useful. So you know, that's what I'm kind of using for now. But I know this is something that, you know, the team is also looking at as well. I don't have any new information on it, but you know, it is something that's there. But in terms of this particular character, this was all rendered somewhere. So a question, will Substance Live entitle you to have the most up-to-date version until the fee? Yes, that's exactly what Substance Live is for. So again, we have Substance Live. You don't have to use it. If you wanted to, you know, just buy Painter outright, you could do that as well. So Live is like it's a subscription service. But don't get scared. It's not like an evil subscription. It's a rent to own, you know. So you know, if you're hearing this for the first time, yeah, it's a rent to own. So you can, you know, just pay a fee to rent. Once you own the thing, you own it. So if you stop paying for the subscription, you can still use the software that you have that you've paid for. So that's one thing that's unique about it there. Let's see, any other questions here? Any news about displacement? I did ask the guys about that the other day. Nothing new to share at this time, but it is, again, something that's actively being worked on. We kind of demonstrated some of that working. I don't know if you saw some of our Substance Days videos where it was Jeremy was showing some new features that we're going to have in Painter in the future, where you can work with scan data, so you can like blend height maps and adjust and work and paint with that data. So with that, he was showing like a displacement shader working in that viewport, which was pretty cool. So again, it's on our roadmap. It's something we're working on, but I don't have anything really new to that yet. Okay, so another question with the network stuff you mentioned. Yes, I believe so. That's one of the things I'm most excited about. So yeah, could you create an API like a result of ZBrush Bridge? Yeah, you could do that. So on my end, that's something I'm kind of going to be experimenting with Modo. So one thing that you can do already with Painter is shoot, it's in the documentation. I don't know where it is exactly, but you can actually launch Painter from a command line, and with that you could have you can give it arguments like mesh and textures. So for example, even before 2.5, you could say like I was going to do this in, say, Modo, where I had my mesh and I wanted to have like a send to Painter button, so I could select my mesh and write a script in Modo that in the background takes the FBX, exports it, launches Painter, gives the FBX location to Painter, as well as any textures maybe I baked in Modo if I were going to do that. Of course, I would bake them in Painter. But anyways, like if you had extra textures you were working with, it would open up Painter and it would import everything and you would have it. So that was working at that stage. So we had that. But yeah, this new API, again, it just allows you to have this kind of live connection. Really, I'm not an expert on it at all right now. It's something that I'm kind of learning new to myself. But one of the things I think it relates to, it's just the protocol, that HTTP protocol that we used. It's kind of like I did this in Maya once, where I was connecting an iPhone to a Maya camera, and so I just used a socket connection to do that. So I was able to make a connection to Maya through a socket connection, send like gyroscope information over to it, and then have the Maya camera take that and rotate and stuff. So this is something very similar to that as well. So that's why I was really excited about it, because I was like, wow, this is going to open the door for us to make, like just like you were saying, maybe it's a ZBrush to Painter, something like that. We'll see where it goes. Again, I don't want to promise anything up front right now because I'm not 100% sure on how it's working. I haven't really dove into it, but I think it's really going to be exciting. So any news on the texture set merging? No, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that. No, I don't have any news on that. It is, again, I hate to say, of course, it is, the truth is it really is on our roadmap. It's something that we're looking at. We're also looking at UDIM support, multiple UDIM support, and all those things. So the team's really, really hard at work on that. So I'm sorry I can't say more at this time, but just stay tuned. We'll be able to share more of that this year. So another question: was there any way to make weighted normals in Substance Painter? I don't know. I'm not sure on that. I haven't heard anything new, but again, something I can go and ask the team about that. But I don't have any news on that yet. Let's see. And yeah, Painter to V-Ray and such. Those are really interesting as well. I hate to say that. I can't say anything, but who knows where things will go in the future. Blur brush. There are more painting brushes that we are working on. So again, that's something I'll go back and ask the team about. Is the AKX export still experimental? I'm sorry, I don't know. Man, I'm a real treasure trove of information on the stream. I'm sorry, everybody. Let me just check real quick. So if I go to export textures, yeah, it's listing here as experimental still. So I'll ask the team about that. I'm not really sure as to why it's still experimental, but it probably just has to do something with GPU. Like you're going to need a beefy GPU for it, and so we didn't want to say like, oh yeah, it works for everything, and then if someone's using on a low end GPU and it causes a crash or a problem, I mean that it kind of stinks. So I guess we have to kind of cover our bases by saying that. Okay, one other question here. Is there a feature in the works that shows Maya transfer maps? I don't know if there is in Painter yet. I think there is, but I can tell you that is in Substance Designer already. So I think it was 5.5, we added the ability for you to have that exact feature. In Painter now, if you have like so like let's say that I had this amazing preview sphere here, and I wanted to change the UVs on that. So let's say I'm in my 3D program, I change the UVs, and then save that. If I come over to my edit project configuration and I just re-import this mesh, you'll see there's an object here, preserve stroke positions on mesh. So if I did that and then click OK, it would reproject all of the painting strokes that I did. And then if I came over to my texture settings, I could rebake my textures. And then there you could update your project. Not the same thing that you're mentioning there, but you do have something like that. Yeah, that's another good one here. Reload custom designer materials. So like, yeah, for instance, if I did this guy, if I right click here, there's not a reload button. So yeah, that's something I'll ask the team about as well. That kind of gets to me. Yeah, I understand that one. Okay, everybody. So I guess yeah, we'll go ahead and clear this up. So next week, a lot of us at the algorithmic team is going to be at GDC, which is awesome. I can't wait to go. I really look forward to that trip. So if anybody is going to be at GDC, please come by our booth and say hello. I'd love to meet you face to face. We can talk. I can ramble on about all kinds of substance stuff if you like. So anyways, yeah, if you're going to be at GDC, please come by and see us, man. We'd love to talk to you guys. So that'll close out this stream. Please stay tuned to our Twitch account. Or our blog. We'll announce the next one. And also hit me up on Twitter. At the 3D Ninja. If you have any ideas for streams, anything that you'd like to see, like some demos or anything like that, let me know, and I'll put that on the list and we can do that. So anyways, everybody have a great rest of the week, and I will see you on the next stream. Take care.